Okay, welcome to the next video of looking at the multi-store model of memory for GCSE psychology. My name is Mr. Ricks. I'm a psychology teacher within the UK, and just uploading my videos here for you guys. Anyone that wants to do some home learning, whether you took a GCSE in psychology or not, whether you want to use these to help you revise, whatever it is, I'm just glad you're here and hopefully enjoying these videos and they're helpful. That's all I want to be. I just want to be helpful. So, how I start lessons. Obviously, all teachers start lessons the same ways. We want you to have a go at recalling information from previous lessons. Okay, this is retrieval, recall practice. This is how you remember stuff over the long amount of time. Is you have to come back to it and you have to recall it and retrieve it, strengthen those memories. So, have a go, pause the video, see if you can remember actually what the multi-store model was before we start evaluating it, which is today's lesson, evaluating the multi-store model. So as I said, pause the video, have a go. Can you fit 9 pieces of information onto this model? Can you remember what the multi-store model is? Draw it down. Okay, assuming you pause the video, I'm going to give you the answers. Oh, actually, there's one missing off there. There is rehearsal missing off these answers right now. So we have input from the environment. Yeah, environment, all this information gets input. It goes into where? Our sensory store. If we pay attention to it, it goes to our short-term memory. What's missing there is there should be a loop around at the top of the short-term memory, like on the previous one there. There's a arrow pointing at the top of that box in the middle. That should be rehearsal. If we rehearse information enough, it keeps it on short-term memory. But if we do it for a long enough amount of time, it gets transferred to our long-term memory. And at any time if we need to recall this information, we retrieve it back to our short-term memory, and at any one of these stages we can forget. Okay, fantastic. That is the multi-store model of memory, and today we're just going to be evaluating it. One other thing worth thinking about is what we also looked at last time is this table where we looked at the coding, capacity, and duration for those 3 memory stores: sensory, short-term memory, long-term memory. So what is the coding, capacity, and duration of those memory stores? Again, pause the video, see if you can recall and remember this information from last time, and I'll give you the answers. Okay, assuming you paused it right there. Here's the answers, guys. So coding, if you can see that, coding goes through our sensory store. Coding for senses, well, is through our senses and our sensory store. The capacity is very limited in our sensory store. Duration also very limited, less than a second. Short-term memory, coded acoustically. We can remember between 5 and 9 items, or 7. We say 7 items. And the duration of our short-term memory is only up to about 30 seconds before we forget the information. Long-term, we have a preference to code information semantically. The capacity that we have for long-term memory is unlimited, and the duration for our long-term memory is also unlimited. Okay, so well done for getting that right. If you got that right, if you didn't, if there's one thing you missed out, one thing you got wrong, however many you got wrong, look at what you got wrong on your piece of paper right now. If you did the task, look, which one did you get wrong? Next time, do not get that one wrong. At least get one better next time, right? You're not going to remember things the first time you do them. You have to rehearse them, go over them, and make sure that you're just better every time. Yeah, you're not going to be perfect at anything you try in life straight away, but if you keep practicing, you go over it, you will be a little bit better than last time, and that's all that you should want from yourself, is just to be a little bit better than you were before. Okay. So the evaluation. So normally when you hear the word evaluation in GCSE, it means strengths, weaknesses, limitations. Yeah, what's good about it, what's bad about it. And it's the same for psychology. So in GCSE psychology, when we learn about theories and studies, which we do, we learn a lot about theories and we learn about a lot of studies. There's 2 studies to every topic. So in memory, there's 2 studies that you're going to have to know about. And for everyone, you look at what's good about it, what's bad about it, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, limitations. Okay, now I explain this, and because I can, because I'm on YouTube. What's a good way to think about this is essentially you're just gonna shit on it. You're just gonna look at what's bad about it, and just try and ruin it. Basically, why is it so terrible? Obviously, some of these theories and ideas and the research that we give you on this curriculum, because it's AQA curriculum, is well, obviously it's all supported by evidence, and there's lots of things about it, or maybe it's got historical importance. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we can't be critical and see what could have been better about it, and you know, because future studies would have changed to do the study maybe better, or find a different way of doing it. You know. So, we're talking about the multi-store model of memory, and going back, and this is a theory. We're going to look at it like a theory. So, what was bad about this? Okay, so remembering what the store is the multi-store model shows us how we remember information. So, starting from it just existing and being input from the environment, how do we remember or forget information? Okay, now let's go back. So there's a couple I've got here. There's two weaknesses, two things. We're going to shit on it first of all. So we don't always need to rehearse this information. Okay, so if you write about this as an exam question, you can say one weakness of the multi-store model is we don't always need to rehearse the information that we receive. Now think about this, right? So the multi-store model says we need to rehearse the information, remember, for it to, well, even stay in our short-term memory, but if we want it to transfer to our long-term memory, it needs to be rehearsed. However, we can remember a lot of things without rehearsing them, such as what we did last weekend. Okay? Right? That's right, yeah? You can remember lots of things. There's lots of memories that you have, things that you did that you don't have to repeat. You don't have to think about them a lot or go over them in your head to remember them. Especially if the events are traumatic, like I was in a motorbike accident and I can remember that happening, and I can remember a lot of things about it. But I didn't have that accident multiple times, right? If you're saying if you have a car accident or anything else, if something, you know, um, I almost drowned at water parks before, and I remember those incidents, yeah, from my own life. Um, and I remember how people reacted around me and what they said to me. But I didn't need to go and drown again to try and remember that. I didn't need to rehearse that information. Okay, so if you're answering this as an exam question, maybe you're doing a 9 marker and you're evaluating, you should at least get 2 marks from every evaluation. So make your point and then explain why that is a weakness. So your point will be, one weakness of the multi-store model memory is we don't always need to rehearse information. Why is that a weakness? Well, it's a weakness because the multi-store model says the information needs to be rehearsed. However, there's a lot of things that we do that don't need to be rehearsed, such as, you know, what we did on the weekend, or such as being in an accident. Okay? Easy peasy. Should at least get 2 marks from every evaluation. Say what's a weakness or a strength, and why is it a weakness or a strength. Link it in. And the last one is another weakness of the multi-store model is meaning is more important than repetition. So do you remember in one of the last videos where I said that long-term memory is encoded semantically, and what semantically encoding something means? It means that we need to that needs to have meaning to us. The information we receive, if we read something or we learn something, we learn things that have meaning to us, that we find fascinating, interesting, silly, ridiculous, rude even. Yeah? Often we can remember those things that have great meaning to us without going over them. And that could be more important than repetition. So the multi-store model itself that you did at the start of this video, it doesn't have semantic encoding on that model. It doesn't have meaning on it. It only has that repetition. So on the screen in front of you, it says saying things over and over again doesn't always make them easier to recall. Yeah, it is more important to understand the meaning of information. And studies have shown elaboration. So this, like, you know, there's a meaning, right? Like turning something into a story is more effective than repeating something. Okay, so there's another weakness. Again, you should get at least 2 marks from this, saying what the weakness is. Why is it a weakness? Okay, and then finally I'm going to give you a strength, something good about the multi-store model, because if you're doing a 9 marker, you should have at least 3 evaluation points. You want to give examiners no reason to not give you full marks on that, right? You could do a really good job of 2 evaluations, but chances are you're going to forget some of the information. You're not going to write as well under pressure, right? You need 3, and you're not going to, and as I said, you need at least 2 marks per eval. You're going to get 2 marks per evaluation, and if you've got 3 and 2 marks per, that's 6. That's more than you need in a 9 marker in AQA GCSE. Okay, because you only need 5 in a standard 9 marker at GCSE AQA psychology. And if you're writing 6 marks, you're giving the examiner no reason to not give you the full marks there. Okay, you want to be the best. So this last evaluation point then says that the multi-store model has research support. So as you're going to write it, you're going to write one strength of the multi-store model is that it has research support. There you go. Bang. Get your mark right there. Why? What is the research? What's the evidence, right? It's like a peel paragraph on the screen right now. You've got your point. It has research support. The multi-store model helps us to understand why we cannot recall information from our short and long-term memory. Okay, because it shows you about forgetting and recall. Yeah, any of those stages you can forget. And it shows you retrieval from long-term to short-term. Murdoch's serial position study, if you haven't done it yet, if you're at the start of GCSE, which you probably are at this stage in the year, but maybe you've probably done Murdoch's serial position study so far, it shows us how we recall information through the primacy and recency effect. So there's your evidence, there's your E in your peel paragraph, right? You've explained about the model, you've given evidence, because you're saying there's research to support the multi-store model, right? It didn't come out of thin air. And this is true in science. A theory or models that you would have been shown in science class or psychology, sociology, whatever you take this as science, right? Even these social sciences as we call them. The theories aren't just guesses or thoughts or beliefs that someone has, right? They come out of research. So scientists do loads and loads of research, and it's all complicated and it's all messy, and you've got to read a lot. So out of that, they take it all in and they come up with a theory, an idea, a more simplistic kind of bundle to try and make sense of all the research. Because we want to know why humans are the way they are. So if we want to know about memory, we could take all the information on memory about how it is taken in, and then how we remember it, and about rehearsal, and about retrieval, and about forgetting. And there's loads of research on all of those things, and then we try and make a model like Atkinson and Schifrin did, try and make a model to show what that looks like. Now, in science, if that model is shown to be wrong, then we either change the model or the theory, or we get rid of it because it's wrong, right? It's research-based. That's what a theory is. A theory is not just a guess, it's not a hypothesis. And even hypotheses aren't just guesses. But we'll get into that in another video. So the evidence that we've got here is Murdoch's serial position study, which you will do in a QA GCSE psychology. And it shows us about recall and the primacy effect and recency effect, okay? Which helps support the idea that we have different short-term and long-term memory stores and that they recall differently, which is something that the multi-store model talks about. Okay, the multi-store model has different short-term and long-term memory, and Murdoch's study shows that people remember things, from the start of a list because they've had time to rehearse it. Long-term memory, right? It's all making sense. And they remember things at the end of a list. This is what Murdoch's study shows. Remember things at the end of a list because they're still in our short-term memory. We haven't had time to forget them yet. So these separate stores, short-term and long-term memory, rehearsal, recall. There you go. So it's like a peel paragraph. That the last bullet point is like a linking it back to talking about the multi-store model, right? Because in the middle we started talking about Murdoch. Okay, fantastic. So try and remember this but this could be a 9 marker that you can do. Again, I copied and pasted the image, and I missed out the rehearsal loop there at the top of the short-term memory. But hopefully by now you've watched the other video and you know what it is. Okay, you know that I've missed out. But you could get a question like this that says evaluate and outline the multi-store model of memory. Now the outline would be 4 marks and the evaluate would be 5 marks. But if you do as I said and you make a point and then explain it very well, you should get at least 2 marks from every evaluation point. Okay, and I've given you 3. So if you remember those 3, if you remember that we don't always have to rehearse information, right? That's a downside. That's a weakness. And if we say that even repetition isn't the best way, meaningful information is probably the best way to remember something. It's another weakness. And then remember that there's research to actually support this model. It didn't come out of thin air. That would be your strength. And that would get you those 5 marks for the evaluation. And then to outline, if you wanted to, just a quick tip before we finish, if you wanted to get the 9 marks on this question, an outline of the multi-store model would look like this. All you do is you talk through the model. That's it, right? That's the 4 marks, yeah? And you can do this easily by now because you've repeated, you've drawn it out so many times. So you could say, the multi-store model is a model of how we remember information. Yeah, that could be your starting sentence if you were to answer this. Firstly, information is input from the environment. There you go. See, you've started it. You've started to get those 4 marks. Firstly, information is input from the environment and transferred to the sensory store. If we pay attention to that information, it moves over to our short-term memory. Okay, so you're just walking through the model that's on the screen. And if you can add in, so an exam tip, if you can add in some of those coding, capacity, duration that we talked about as well into this, and then there's no way in hell that an examiner is not giving you the marks. So if you say, if we pay attention to information, it goes to our short-term memory. Our short-term memory has a capacity of 7 items and a duration of 30 seconds. But if we rehearse the information, like you've added it in there, you've talked about capacity and duration and coding. If you just throw 1 or 2 in there, there's no way you're not getting those 4 marks for this description. Okay, short-term memory. If we rehearse the information, it stays in our short-term memory. If we rehearse it long enough, it gets transferred to long-term memory. At any time when we need to recall information, it gets retrieved to short-term memory. And at any one of these stages, the sensory store, the short-term memory, or long-term memory, we can forget the information. There you go. Verbally, I've just said it. I've just answered that question, 4 marks, and the evaluation I've showed you on this video, there's your other 5 marks. Okay, if you say what the problem or the good thing is and explain what they are, that's it. This is the hardest thing you're going to do in GCSE psychology. This is the hardest thing you're going to do in GCSE psychology. And if you can become confident in knowing the information, so knowing the multi-store model, that's the first part. And if you become confident in shitting on it, as I said at the start, and ripping it apart and seeing what's bad about it, as well as what's good about it, and then you've got those other 5 marks. Okay, if you do exactly as I say, and then the hardest thing that you have to do in GCSE psychology is I wouldn't say easy, but it's a lot easier. Okay, that's it for today, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully this has been helpful to you as some practice.